people that go off the rails, that go off the cliff, forget that primary flywheel. They're looking for what's next. Instead of answering the question.
Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive. Brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. All right, welcome to the Triple P Podcast. This is episode number 34, and we got Dr. Onieal. And Dr. Onieal was at the Ohio Fire Chiefs Winter Symposium, so if you were able to see him there, we're going to kind of expand a little bit on what he had presented at that symposium or the legislative conference. But furthermore, we're going to talk about his amazing career in the fire service. And I know that I was very interested in hearing from Dr. Onieal as a young individual in the fire service, still trying to make his way. So really looking forward to that. So welcome to episode number 34, Dr. Onieal.
Thanks, Clayton. How are you? Josh, it's good seeing you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I was hoping we could start. So you've got a fantastic career. Started out as a firefighter, moved all the way up through the ranks. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but up through the ranks to the chief of the Department of Jersey City, New Jersey. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And then you moved on to National Fire Academy.
National Fire Academy, and then Deputy United States Fire Administrator, which is the senior career fire official for the country.
That is fantastic. That's really cool.
But
what got you into the fire service to begin with?
That is just a weird story. I had friends that would live and die to get on the fire department anywhere. And I was not that kind of a person. I came home, I was one of 8 kids, so there was not a lot of money in the house, and there was no money to go to college, and there was a war going on, and I got drafted. And so when I came back home, I was home about a year. I was doing different jobs, working on the docks. I was driving trucks, that kind of stuff. And my dad was on the fire department, and he came home one day with the application, and he said, "Here you go, fill this out." So being, I don't know what I was, 21 years old. Yeah, okay, Dad, sure. And did you fill that out? No, Dad. Yeah, well, fill it out. Okay, Dad. Did you fill it out? He said, "All right, well, I'm going to fill it out. Sign it right here. I'm taking." Okay. So he filled it out. I signed it, and I went to take the test with about 5 or 6 other friends of mine, and I was the only one that passed. Of course, I was a veteran. I was in good shape. So at that time in New Jersey, and it's still a case, if you're a veteran and you pass the test, you immediately go to the top of the list, according to your mark. So it's veterans preference, and it's only for entrance. It doesn't count for promotion or anything like that. So I got on they called and I went on the job. When I went on the fire department, I was afraid of heights. I wouldn't go up a step stool. And so, of course, I wound up working 15 years in a ladder company as a firefighter, a lieutenant, and a captain. I went to a firehouse where there were a couple of other veterans, and they were all going to school on the GI Bill. And it was paying $400 a month tax-free to go to school. That made sense to me. So I went to school, and I just kept going to school. And then they extended the benefits when President Carter or President Ford gave absolution to the draft dodgers. In kind of a payback, they gave us another year of benefits. If you had exhausted your first 3 years of benefits, they gave you a 4th year. So I went to graduate school. And then, long story made short, I just liked school, and I went back and finished up my doctorate at New York University, and at the same time was going up through the ranks, principally because it was testing.
Yeah.
And I was good at taking tests. I knew how to take tests. So, I mean, that's the story. But to be truthful with everybody, and this is a truth in advertising story, I never got a pint of water out of a pumper in my life.
Really? So somebody
I was
scared of
never
heights
assigned
ended
to a
up
bumper.
on.
Really? The truck the
I
whole
spent
time?
all of my time on ladder companies.
Wow.
So we're here in Ohio. You're from, essentially New York City and suburbs. So just describe for us what life was like in those years as a young firefighter in Jersey City.
Well, we were directly across the river from New York City, so it's 3,000 feet away. So our professors in the college were New York City fire officers, chief officers, um, and they had a lot of influence. Whenever we had mutual aid, they would come over. When we had pier fires along the waterfront, we fought fires in the Holland Tunnel, which is the tunnel between Jersey City and New York City. We had subway lines from Jersey City into New York City. We fought fires in there. So we later on, when the World Trade Center was built, they would call us to send our air unit over to whenever there was a multiple alarm in the World Trade Center, because our air unit was closer to New York City's World Trade Center than their air unit.
Yeah.
So again, there was a lot of influence. Now, when I went on the fire department, I didn't know anything outside, like everybody else. You don't know anything outside your own fire department. So it was just, if you went to college, you grew up, you went to college, you became a teacher. If you didn't go to college, you had a high school diploma, you became a police officer or a firefighter. Those were the two good jobs. And so, the cops locked up bad guys and we went to fires. We went to fires all the time. I was in the fire department 8 months, and we had a 8-day cycle of work at that time. It was 2 days on, 48 hours off, 2 nights on, 72 hours off. So it was a 42-hour work week, 10s and 14s. And we called 10s and 14s a tour. So 8 days would be a tour. I went in the fire station in December. The following August, we went out and had a party because we had one tour without a multiple alarm fire.
Oh my God.
Wow.
So there were many nights would we be going from fire to fire, or several fires in one night. But you didn't know it. That was work. That's what you did. It was like me saying to you, we went to 4 EMS calls last night.
Yeah.
It's just normal. So it wasn't until I got out a little bit, I started, going to school and meeting and New York City was the same way. So, that's all we knew. And it wasn't until, you start getting out, I got to the National Fire Academy and I realized the depth of the small fire departments and the volunteer fire departments and the challenges that they faced. But to quote most firefighters, at the time, I was just dumb and happy. I had a good job. It was exciting, and that's what we did.
With that kind of like tempo, I guess, run volume, whatever you want to call it, that number of fires, you guys had to be just so confident in your skills. Just going from one to another to another.
Well, you got very good at reading buildings, and that was the skill set. You knew, if you had an H-type apartment, tenement building, what you were going to be doing. If it was an old law tenement building, what you were going to be doing. If it was a one-family, weren't too many one-families, but 2 families, you knew the construction, you knew the neighborhoods, and you knew where you're going to run into problems and where you were, where you weren't.
How big of a department is Jersey City itself?
When I went on, it was 800, and when I left, it was chief of department, about 650.
Oh,
and
wow.
Now it's back up to it's over 700. Now it's the largest department in the state. Before, when I was in it, it was second largest after Newark.
Out of all those ranks that you held with Jersey City, what do you think your favorite was?
Deputy chief. because you had the opportunity to influence and help all levels of the department. There was for a long time, I ran a school to train firefighters and police officers how to take promotional exams. All right, it's a skill set. And I taught them how to organize the material. Then I taught them how to take tests. And so it was very good. And, I got a lot of people promoted because, you'd help them along. And, when you're going to school and it's the fire department, right? So whatever your weakness is, they're going to pick on you. My weakness was I was going to school. So they would persecute me about, you can't put out books with fires and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And, as a firefighter, that was going on. And then lieutenant, it was going on. Captain, started to slow down a little bit. And then, I'm a battalion chief. It was there was nothing anymore. They weren't picking on me anymore about going to school. When I made deputy chief, they were like, chief, we were just kidding around. We were just, we were. And then when I made chief, they were like, I told him to go to school, you see,
Yep.
So
funny how that narrative changes, right?
What? How old were you when you first got originally hired at Jersey City?
22, 23.
Okay. And then when you retired, is that, I don't know how Jersey's is as far as the pensions.
It's a 25-year retirement.
Okay.
When I was offered the job as superintendent, I was on the job 24 years. So I bought a year's time, military time back, which the pension allows you to do.
Yep.
And so I retired at 25, but I was 46 years old.
Okay.
45, 46.
Wow, that's a great career. Now, tell us, what would you say would be from that time period, as the fire service grows, changes, evolves, what would you say is one of the biggest involvements throughout your career that you noticed from first starting as a young 22-year-old till, you're 47?
I would have to say education. And it was the incipient stages of education where there were a number of 2-year degrees that were available. Maybe there were 2 or 3 different programs in the state of New Jersey. I happened to live in the same town where they had a 4-year degree program. And so that was it. John Jay was across the river. You could go to John Jay as well. New York City was I went to high school in New York City. It was that close. So you had that symbiosis, the one helping the other, going back and forth. And so that was the big thing that I saw. But at the time, it was not valued. They looked at experience. If you had, there was a couple of officers in Jersey City that were officers in World War II, and they kind of did well, but it was all based on civil service testing. So you weren't always getting the best and the brightest. You were getting the best test taker.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now today, they have a lot of, I think you're referring to a lot of formal education. Was there a lot of like company officer education like that we see today?
Not that you see today.
No, not that you see today. Okay.
And there were no NFPA standards at that time. There were no standards at all. So every department had their own training academy. In the state of New Jersey, there were, at that time, probably, 15 or 16 county training academies, but my county didn't have one. Jersey City was the county training academy. We had the members from other departments that would come in and train with us.
Wow. Yeah, that's so when you said you went to school in New York City, I think when you were in the class, you kind of described that you could see the World Trade Center from where you were at, from like your station or something, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Just across the water.
Yeah, it was really our compass. And I know that, the people from the Midwest that may be watching this, I know that you you know, northeast and south and west, and you can look at the sun and tell what time it is and what month it is, and you know, whether it's going to snow next week. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in that area, that's not the way we work. And but you could always look at the sky and look at the World Trade Center and know where you were. That was your compass. That was your base camp, if you will. So when I was chief of the department, I would walk across the street, get on the subway, and go have lunch with my friends in the New York City Fire Department in the World Trade Center. But there was something called the Sky Lobby on the 44th floor, and they had a great restaurant up there. And it was cheap. So, you know, we had, that's how close it was.
So you ran every rank in Jersey City, right? Starting firefighter,
Yes.
then lieutenant, captain, and then was it a battalion chief from there, or okay, and then deputy chief?
When the rank of lieutenant was instituted, I was the first group of lieutenants. And then after about 8 years, it didn't work. And they just eliminated that ranking, made us all captains. And it's a long story, a long, sad story of, you know, government, well-intentioned reason, you know, but didn't work out. It just didn't do it right.
So when we're talking about, when Clayton was asking about basically training for company officers, so I think I've got this math right. You started in 71, you retired in 95.
Right.
Is that right? So when you came on, you were talking about, you know, how many fires you had, and did you see a drop off as you climbed the ranks? You would have had a lot of officers retiring that had all that experience in that kind of era they call the war years in that area, right? So you had fires all the time. Did you see a drop off as those real experienced officers retired, and then you maybe didn't have as many fires, you know, once you get into the 80s, we'll say? Did you see a big drop off in the experience level of your officers, and how would you overcome something like that?
Josh, I didn't see a drop off in the fires. What was going on was that we had a new mayor come in, and the city was going through a process of gentrification along the waterfront, and there was a lot of arson for profit. There's a whole almost a business of getting rid of poor tenants, demolishing the building and putting up high-rise buildings and, you know, expensive housing. So, but what I found was that we had, and this was by design at least, when I was a battalion and a deputy, I realized that those officers that I had were very selective in what information they shared with you. I don't know whether it was just part of the culture or what. You know, you watched them, you observed who was good, who wasn't good. But I was not going to allow that to happen. So we defined a working fire as more than a one-room burnout. Every working fire we had, we pulled everybody together the next day, whatever it was, and we would go over 1 or 2 or 3 fires that we may have had. And, you know, first engine, second engine, third engine, fourth engine, first ladder, second ladder, rescue. What did you do? And these were the rules. First of all, we started with first do, second do, third do, fourth do. Either the firefighter or the pump chauffeur operator would talk about it, then the officer would talk about it. Then they go to the second engine. The rule was you could admit, you know, we encourage you admit mistakes or what would you have done better, but you were never allowed to criticize anybody, ever. Everybody spoke. Everybody talked about maybe the difficulties they had or the challenges they faced or what didn't go right for them and what did go right for them. And then I was the last to speak. And I would talk about what I saw, what I did. If I made a mistake, I told them I made a mistake. Or if I did something that, reflecting on it the day after, I could have done this better next time. So that there was this passing of every day, this passing of information. Now, not every battalion had a fire maybe or something, but that was how we kind of inculcated that information. And it got to the point where, which is what I was shooting for, which was the goal, was that they didn't need me at a fire.
Yeah.
You know, by the time I showed up as a battalion or a deputy, everything was being done. You know, first 3 lines. One line in on the fire, second line to back up the first line, or go to the floor above the fire. Third line, do what the second line didn't do. And I tell them, if I come on the scene and all I have to do is look down and count to 3 and know you're doing your job. You know, first ladder, force entry for the engine, search the fire floor. Second ladder, take the top floor of the building, whatever floor above the fire, search, check the backyard for jumpers. You know, there was just this ritual that they went through. And then, you know, the discussions all went according to SOP.
Yeah. And I'm grinning ear to ear because I feel like over the course of the years, from the time that Onieal was in to the time we are right now, is like firefighters have overcomplicated things to just like exactly what he said. The first line goes to the fire. The second line is going to either back it up or go to the floor above. And the third line is going to do what the second line didn't do. It's that simple. Like, I feel like we just overcomplicate some of those things to, you know, extremely a lot. And, but we all know that you just have these, I call them default tasks. So that's what I refer to all the time. We have the engine default task, we have the medic default task, we have the ladder default task on every single structure fire. And now, yeah, there's going to be those game time decisions that need to have to be made. You're going to have to pivot. You're going to have to, you know, and that's what the benefits of the post-incident analysis come from. That's also the benefits of the daily trainings and the just exposing firefighters to a magnitude of different skill sets so they can adapt when, hey, we got to pivot, we got to do something. But we all know if we, you know, have default tasks, then we know where we're going. And so I love that. I just love that.
So I personally, I think we're seeing this kind of renaissance in the fire service, and this is kind of new information to me as I've been doing some research for some classes in my department and stuff like that. And I think we really are seeing kind of a renaissance going back to basic tasks and how the basics are what gets you through, you know, whatever 95% of all your calls. I'm kind of encouraged fire service wide because there's so much information out there. There's so many, I mean, you've got to be critical when you're getting information from the internet, but there's so much opportunity out there for training, especially at the company officer level, like you talked about, that really wasn't available before, but it is getting back to those basics. I think I'm pretty optimistic about it. Honestly, I think for a long time, we did overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
And now I think we're seeing that pendulum kind of swing back to the middle, where we're getting back to what we would call old school firefighting basics.
And I couldn't agree more, because the thing is that, you know, the firefighters would get together, and then it's like that next new training company that would start, or you would have the training officers within your organization. And they, to back when you were on the line a lot, was always knowledge is power. And so I feel like that, you know, baby boomer era kind of had this knowledge is power and held it close to the chest, but then wanted to display that they knew something more than you did in the training piece. And then you accompany that with some individuals that were the newest, latest, greatest training company that was going to just, you know, wow the people and so much more now that we have it in the social media and the, you know, that I just caution firefighters, you got to vet those individuals that are in. But, you know, Chief Wells here that teaches all over with the Fools, the Northern Ohio Fools, and all those different, I talked to him about it because obviously they have a whole bunch of, you know, large scale fire trainings that they go to. And what he explains it exactly that. It's the basics. All we're doing is teaching basics back to the search or back to the hose line pulls or back to and it's amazing how many people will be at those trainings and not necessarily know those basics. And so you just challenge firefighters out there to spend the time and get really, really good at those things in the firehouse. So I'm glad to hear how simple it was back then, and hopefully we can make it. The only thing that's really majorly different is the synthetics and the fires and how quick they burn today compared to what they used to, for sure.
The other thing, Clayton, that I'm really pleased to see is the science that we're now developing through the UL and the Fire Research Institute that we didn't have in those days. And that is so critical because we're getting the opinion and the war stories out of the fire service, and we're putting in real science, because really what we're dealing with is two very basic sciences: chemistry and physics. That's what a fire is. Okay, the chemistry part is the burning, and the physics is the building that you're in. And that the physics part, the building part, is changing rapidly, and we're using methods and materials of construction that the codes cannot even keep up with anymore. They are now planning a 55-story cross-laminated timber building in Milwaukee. Now, the reason they're planning a 55-story cross-laminated timber building is because they already have a 25-story cross-laminated timber building in Milwaukee. So, there's a whole host of reasons why that's happening, but it's happening. And I'm afraid sometimes that folks are asleep at the switch. They're not recognizing what's going on.
Sure.
It's hard to keep up with those changes.
Yeah.
We've been talking about lightweight truss construction, like I-joist construction and all that stuff for a little while, but I think the speed at which construction methods and materials are changing is faster than what especially the fire service can keep up with. We're generally slow to change anyway, but man, people are making up new stuff all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, they are.
Well, and then you think about it even more so, the cost has gotten so out of hand. So they're just trying to, who's going to be making that next most durable product as cheap as they possibly can. And then there you go. You have, smaller dimension, and you no longer, just like as we've seen over the years, you don't have that true 2x4 anymore.
No.
And how you have the glue and the particles, it's just one of those things that it involves, but it is very, very hard to keep up with it on the fire service side. Because a lot of times you may not have a seat at the table when those decisions are being made. What's the next, for the next best building material to be out there. So 55, that's crazy. That's big. That's really big.
Yeah.
I don't know how many 55-story buildings we have in the state of Ohio. I'll be real honest. There's not many.
Really?
There can't be too many.
Yeah.
I mean, a couple in Columbus, Cleveland, and
maybe Cleveland, Columbus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly not here in Oregon.
Not in our neck
Finley,
of the woods.
too. Yeah.
So, Dr. Onieal, you moved on from Jersey City directly to the National Fire Academy. Is that right?
I did.
Tell us about that transition and how that whole thing went for you.
My first day at the National Fire Academy was as superintendent. I had never been there before. And the reason I'd never been there before was because I was doing other things, going to school in New Jersey and, going to college and things. So when I got there, I started to do an assessment. And one of the first things I did was I sit down with every employee, just have a conversation. Who are you? What do you do? What are your challenges? What are you trying to accomplish? And as I started to listen, I realized, and then I went back into the books to look, I realized that the biggest challenge I faced was that they had a series of superintendents over and over again. And I joked around. I said I could take a handful of marbles, get on a plane, lands anywhere in America, throw the marbles in the air, and hit 3 former superintendents of the National Fire Academy, because they were just presidential appointees. So I was the first career employee. So my first opening statement to all of them was, I'm here for 20 years. And, we're going to have some stability. The second challenge I faced was because there was no consistent leadership, they were kind of going all over the place all at once. So I recognized that they told me that they needed a stable direction to go to. And that stable direction was professional development, which we came up with, which is education, training, experience, and continuing education. And we began to set up a system nationwide that would allow that to happen. So the first group that we wanted to get together was the state training directors in each state. So in Ohio, in Reynoldsburg or Reynoldsville?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, your state training director. And so I met with them probably 4, 5, 6 months into my tenure there, and laid out kind of where we wanted to go, and got most of them in cooperation. And then through either retirements or changes of mind, we had a fairly strong organization in about 2 years. The next challenge was the education piece. At the time, there was about 120 2-year and 4-year degree programs around the country, all teaching different things, different standards, different subjects. And I commonly consistently refer to the medical model, which if you go to medical school in Maine, you learn the same anatomy and physiology that you learn in Texas. Okay, it's not different. So we need to standardize those college curriculums. Well, getting colleges to standardize was a little, I don't know if we got there yet, but we're there. We started something called the Fire and Emergency Services Higher Education Program, where we standardized the curriculum. And if a school followed the standard curriculum, we would give them a certificate from the National Fire Academy that they were FESI compliant. It didn't mean anything other than they were following a standard curriculum. We got the book publishers to say, they were publishing books all over the place on anything that anyone thought was a good idea. And we said, no, let's try to narrow this thing. And this is what building construction should be. And this is what should be in it. And this is what combustion should be. And this is what should be in it. And so probably in about 7 or 8 years, we got that done. And then the last link was to connect the training piece and the education piece, the state training systems and the colleges and the universities to work together. And the rule was pretty basic. The state training system, because it was a government agency and we could, deal with them on a government to government basis, the college had to go to the state training system and make a partnership. We didn't care what the partnership was, but the college and the state training system had to sign off and agree to work together, whichever way they could. And that got the professional development piece. At the same time, we were encouraging research as well as, and there aren't any yet, but there aren't any doctoral programs in fire, but we have graduate degrees now in fire administration and things like that did not exist, when I went to Emmitsburg.
I feel like and you think, I guess, thinking of the challenges that you faced in pre-internet era,
Sure.
or at least maybe a fledgling internet, but it wasn't anything, like we have now. I think it's a daunting task when you're talking about the entire country trying to get consistency. I mean, it's tough just in a small area to get consistency and all that. And you're taking all these different organizations and they have autonomy and they think they know what's best. Did people, like, say, state fire academies or state fire marshals or whoever you were dealing with, did you get a lot of pushback on this idea of trying to get consistency? Because you have somebody in Arizona, like, nobody from DC is going to tell me what to do,
Yeah. Well, yes, the answer to your question is yes, I did. But, and I always tried to use logic and convincing and, gathering support from organizations to do that. But at the end of the day, if I had to really, pull out my 6 gun and to convince them, I always said 2 things. I said, I used to till a 5 truck in Jersey City, and I have a doctorate from New York University. What are you going to tell me? And then that kind of shut down. But I hated to do that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
sometimes
But that is the difference. That is the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, because all the previous superintendents didn't have the experience you had. And, so I think that did make a huge difference that, nobody wants to push their weight around if you didn't have to. But, at times you did have to pull that out to show that, hey, you're familiar with the business. You did it, where all the previous ones that they potentially were able to push back and then the individual in your role before wasn't able to really, they didn't have that piece.
But I have to say one more time, I hated to do that.
I'm sure. I'm sure nobody likes to do that.
Yeah, no, I think your background would have exactly what Clayton said. Instead of a presidential appointee I'm sure they had some fire experience, but you filled every one of those seats on your way to that role, to that position. So that gave you the credibility when dealing with firefighters across the country or fire marshals.
When you think about the fire service today as it is, I mean, if you do lean upon that a lot, what people have as far as experience and things go and where their credibility's at. So I got a question about NIFRS. Was NIFRS established by the time you were already there? And were we reporting to this national fire? Okay. And
that was established.
Okay. And that just continued after you were there, because now we're seeing that change with the NIFRS, kind of making to this model of the nearest, and kind of like what you had experienced during the time you were there, a little bit of pushback from the states and things like that. And I think that's what's happening. At least that's what's happening here in Ohio from our state fire marshal. And I think it's my understanding, maybe potentially a few other states with this pushback on the nearest system. So do you have a pulse on that?
Well, I don't know much about the nearest system. I do know that I can share with you from other government agencies the challenges that they face. And, the biggest, it's 2 big ones. One was that the FBI wanted to go to an incident-based crime reporting system. Everyone thinks that they have a crime reporting system for the FBI, but they don't. What they have is an index crimes, murder, theft, and, whatever the 10 crimes are. You sent the information in on a postcard. We had, in the 70s, we had an incident-based fire reporting system. The FBI has tried several times to the tune of over $1 billion, B with $1 billion, to get their incident-based crime reporting system up, and I don't know that it's still done. The biggest one was where the Veterans Administration and the Department of Defense tried to coordinate the medical records of discharged veterans into the VA healthcare system. So I'll give you the data on that one. There are 18 million veterans in the United States, give or take. 9 million of those veterans are in the VA healthcare system. So there's 9 million not in it. They have tried to combine those 2 medical record systems for years. I don't know that, and they're up over $1 billion, and I don't know that they were successful at doing that. Now, to give you some sense of this, fire reporting is 27 million records a year, not 18 million over 50 years and 9 million over 50 years. So it's a challenge to do data in the federal service. On top of that, the security issues in the federal service are extremely rigid. And because I don't know what it is today, it's been out for a while, but if you could get into one part of the system, you were home free.
Yeah.
You figured out the combination to the safe, and now you were all over the place. So uh, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting to see what happens because, it just puts different challenges on if it's an evolving thing. And I think really it boils down to, just like at the symposium, they talked a lot about it, so we had the state fire marshal's office there, and then also the federal Jenkins talk about it all. So it's interesting to see where it's going to go and how it is. And for us, for the unique part on the fire chief side, what we're dealing with is making sure that we meet both because, grant funding and everything else. And obviously we got to report to the state, but what are we going to report to the federal government? So, so just wanted to catch on that.
I think we'll have to see. I mean, the jury's still out. I'm sure they're good people with good intentions. And I know Tommy very well. He's a good guy. And so hopefully, we'll get to a resolution.
They've got an aggressive schedule. I know that.
That's for sure.
I think it's overdue. These things have a need to evolve over time.
We're in 2025.
Yeah. So I think they can do it. And I had a good discussion with Tom Jenkins as well. Seemed like a really great guy, passionate about Nearest. So I wish him well, and I hope all of us can get on the same page, with the reporting, and make it not more of a burden on the individual fire departments.
Correct. And that's the biggest thing for us. I mean, with just making sure, 2 reports and so on and so forth. But well, let's jump into what are the topics that you talked about at the symposium. So you talked about, and the title of that was How the Mighty Fall, which was a very interesting topic. I have to believe that throughout your career, you've been around a ton of people, and something came to your mind to say, you know what, just like you taught those young officers to be able to promote because you taught them how to take tests, you felt that you had to put a class together to talk about how to have a healthy, long career without making stupid mistakes. So let's talk about that.
Okay, well, it's based on a book by his name just went out of my head. Guy Jim Collins, and he wrote Good to Great, but he wrote a book about how the mighty fall. And he did a lot of interviews and watched a lot of people, famous people, high-ranking people, powerful people. And what was it that made them fail? And not fail in the sense of made a mistake and now we can fix it. Go off a cliff, fail, ruin their lives, embarrass their families, sometimes wind up in jail. What were the things that led them to this kind of behavior? So he kind of broke it down into 4 steps. And the first was hubris, that all of a sudden you're very lucky. Maybe you start a company and it goes viral and you make millions and millions of dollars. And you begin to believe, once something like that happens, if you're not careful, you begin to believe that you're special, that you have some pixie dust that was sprinkled over you that makes you more special than anyone else. And you begin to believe that you can almost do anything. You're just looking for that. What's the next thing that I'm going to do to make success? And they begin to, as Collins describes it, they begin to neglect what they call the primary flywheel. Now, a flywheel is a mechanical device that does the same thing over and over and over and over again. They're like cylinders in your car. They go up and down over and over again, or a camshaft that pushes them, whatever it is. And that primary flywheel for these people, whatever it is the thing that made them successful, that they do to. So, when I talk to the fire and emergency services, I tell these men and women, what's our primary flywheel? And then they'll say, well, putting out fires or answering EMS calls. I said, no, your primary flywheel is service. Somebody's having a bad day, you show up, they got a problem, and you fix it. Now, that problem could be a leaky pipe in a basement. It could be a dog barking next. I don't know what it's going to be, but you're going to take care of that problem as best you can. People that go off the rails, that go off the cliff, forget that primary flywheel. They're looking for what's next. Instead of answering the question of why they're going to do something, they're just simply asking, what are we going to do next? What are we going to be successful at? And they forget that all of us, everybody, the three of us here, everybody watching this are lucky. You're lucky you were born in this country. You're lucky that you had parents or guardians that took care of you and loved you. You were fortunate that you live in a community that had school systems that educated you, and there were systems in place to help you do all these things, educate, be successful, good health care, all of those things. There are people all over the world that don't have that, okay? So we're very lucky. So once they hit this point, the next step is that they start looking at, they call it the undisciplined pursuit of more. They want a bigger this or more of that. And the story I like to tell is about a big box store company that sold everything. They sold televisions, they sold health and beauty aids, they sold children's clothing, adult clothing, tools, everything. And everybody says Walmart. Well, it wasn't Walmart. It was a company called James Way. And they had these big box stores all over the place. And James Way wanted to grow rapidly. And they bought another company called Zayres, Zayres. And it was like the proverbial snake eating the pig. They just didn't merge well. And they went out of business. And this little guy down in Arkansas named, Walmart guy.
Yeah, Walton. So was it Sam Walton?
Thank you.
Is that right?
Sam Walton.
Yeah.
Driving his pickup truck, bought up all these vacant stores and started a company called Walmart.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So
another thing is,
before you move off that, do you know, and I have no idea, it's an honest question, do you know what made Walton's vision a success where others failed? Do you know like anything specific that he did?
Yeah, he did a couple of things. First of all, he maintained his humility. He drove an old pickup truck, and he would visit the stores and talk to his employees. And he before he expanded, built a new store in a community, he had some magic formula in his head that he looked for. And did they meet? And then are we going to get the right people to work in the store? And, I'm sure now it's a lot different.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how he did it. And I think till the day he died, he drove that old pickup truck.
Well, if he was going around listening to his employees and making, addressing those concerns or making tweaks to the business model or whatever it was, I mean, that's definitely the foundation of what you should do.
That kept him grounded.
Yeah.
And he never got, essentially too big for your britches type of thing, and kept him grounded to see what needed to be changed. But that special, like you said, the way he picked the community, knowing that was going to make the difference of those individuals that he was going to hire for that store, was the biggest impact of it. So
it's similar to what we need to remember to do as fire chiefs is take the time to talk to the rank and file, talk to the firefighters, and find out what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. And if there's changes that need to be made, if they have good input, do your best to try to implement that on a department.
Well, and very much at their level too. It doesn't always have to be like that formal. It's on the bay floor as you cross by. It's eating lunch at the kitchen table. It's just asking, hey, what rumors can I crush today? and trying to be communicated, trying to communicate all the time, because I've always found, and we've all been there, man, like we've all been there where we were the firefighters sitting around the table. If it wasn't communicated with us, you're going to create what you think is the answer. And most of the time that's not the right answer. So, but yeah, so I think he just never lost track of his people, and that's awesome. Okay.
When a company or the organization starts to get larger and you need more people, there's a decision that has to be made. And you see this at every election. I'm not only talking about the presidential election, I'm talking about gubernatorial and mayoral, where they have to get the right people in the organization. And they choose sometimes loyal people over competent people. Now, there's a balance. I mean, you can't have people that are totally competent and ignore the need for loyalty, but at the same point, appointing loyal people, completely loyal people who are incompetent, is going to destroy your organization as well. But these people typically will appoint loyal people over competent people because they need to fill these positions.
I think about, when you say that, I think about just the yes man or the yes woman, whatever.
Yeah.
The yes person. They never tell you what you need to hear if you're their boss, when you need the competent one that's going to be able to handle a project and be able to do that and be able to stand up for, like, hey, this is not going to be good.
Yes men are pallbearers. And
okay.
In my the organizations that I worked in, we would have discussions with, let's take the National Fire Academy, okay? I had 2 deputy superintendents, great guys, Kirby Kiefer, Rob Neal, and we would be faced with an issue, whatever it was, and we'd sit down and talk about it and try to figure out a strategy to deal with it. But if the 3 of us agreed totally, one of us would say, we're missing something here.
Yeah.
We can't all agree. You need to have men and women in your organization who are comfortable giving you bad news. And I would always say this: fire department, fire administration, give me the bad news. I want to hear it first. I want to hear it right away, because that's going to give me time to fix it. I don't need a hand grenade on my desk with no pin.
That's awesome. One of the notes I wrote down, I love that. I love that quote you said about
pallbearers.
Yeah, loyalists become your pallbearers. I wrote that down from your original presentation. I thought that was really cool. There was a recent example, and it is refreshing. I'm glad we touched on this. Like, you need to have people that are willing to give you that bad news. So,
yeah,
recent example for me, I received an email from one of my battalion chiefs. I read it and I misinterpreted it, and it kind of made me mad, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't respond right away, waited till the next day, read it again. I still misread it.
Because you're reading it with a bias.
Yeah, my bias, because I already had it in my head. So I respond with a respectful yet kind of stern email back to him, right? So go into work the next day, and he's there, and he was like, hey, I think you misunderstood what I was trying to talk about. And I'm like, I don't know how I could, and I quoted a couple things from it. And our assistant chief came walking out, and he's been on the job 34 years, 35 years, something like that. Really well respected, and we have a good relationship. And I looked at him and I'm like, Chief, what'd you think? Because he was copied on it. Chief, what'd you think? Did I misinterpret that? And he kind of looked at me. He's like, yeah, actually, I think you did. I'm like, oh, damn, I did not. Are you serious? And then they went on to explain what they actually meant.
There's no tone in text.
And it was my fault. But in that case, both of them, the first one was like, I think maybe you misinterpreted that. The second one was like, yeah, you blew that one. Yeah. So it was humbling, that's for sure.
Let me give you a little saying, Josh, okay? Be curious and not judgmental.
Right.
Is something that served me well, okay?
Yeah.
That makes good sense. Be curious and not judgmental.
I had a statement that I would make. can you help me understand?
I should have done that with my email instead of jumping to a conclusion. I should have talked to him first.
I don't understand this.
There's so many other extracurricular things that kind of like that you deal with on a regular basis that, you know, a week from that, or even the very next day, let's say the very next day you read that email, you could have a completely different, you know, like viewpoint on that exact same email because of all the other factors that played into the role on that Tuesday when you read that email. It just struck you the wrong way. But
I'm glad we touched on that, because I think that's important for us to remember. Like, receiving bad news is actually a good. Well, it's not a good thing, but it's a good thing that they're willing to tell you that.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah. Well, that you've created an environment that they're comfortable enough to approach you or tell you that, and I think that's the biggest. You know, that's a huge win.
You talked about that, Dr. Onieal. Just like with the post-incident critiques you were talking about, like, be honest and be willing to say, hey, I could have done this better, or could have, you know, I made a mistake here, whatever. Build the culture in your organization to kind of foster that environment.
Yeah. Especially more now today too. If we try to break the culture of entitlement, like, you know, that they know everything or that they deserve everything, whatever. Like, we're not all the best, and everybody has to learn something and it's okay to not be right. It's completely fine. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make a mistake, but let's make mistakes on the fire ground or on the training ground. And then that way we can hopefully have limited mistakes on the fire ground. So, but again, you also have to have what you had talked about in that post. So you got to have a culture that allows you to come back and express that. So the mistake that I made on the fire ground that time just saved that exact same mistake from 5 other people that are listening in the room, you know, that they feel comfortable about it, that it's not punitive. It's not going to be, you know, that they're, you know, criticized after that. So
I'll give you just another tip that I used to use, and it was a way of using humor to find out. As I said to you earlier, when I came up through the job, they kind of picked on me a lot for going to school. It was all good kidding. I mean, it was just the fire service stuff. But then when I became a battalion chief and a deputy chief, if somebody did something wrong at a fire or something like that, I would say to them, "Are you here on a scholarship?" And so they would, you know, everybody kind of realized I wasn't happy about something, but that gave them the opportunity to explain to me what they were doing and why before I jumped on their stuff and let them have it. You know, I didn't act that way, but you know, they were always afraid that I would do that, and I never did. But
if you've got a culture that you can joke around at the different ranks within your department, I think you're doing something right. That's my personal opinion. Using humor like that, kind of busting each other's chops a little bit, it's just fun to go to work.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I was doing that yesterday with guys are going through this pretty intense safety and survival class right now. We're in the middle of that, and we're just out there kind of busting each other's chops a little bit, and it was a lot of fun.
Which is the other part too is you think about your best friends that you have right now today that you can call up and have no problem telling them, hey, that you're pissed off about something and that they did it. And, you know that you might just get into a little bit of a business of a back and forth that we don't agree on this, and I'm going to let you know about it. But tomorrow you still love the guy. It's just like that to me is the true brotherhood, where you can have those conversations and once you create that culture, especially with any of your officers or in the firefighter ranks, that this ain't high school no more. You don't have to go and tell 3 people behind the other person's back. Just go have a conversation with the person you have a problem with, and then hopefully you can work it out. But at the end of the day, once you fully respect I think where it drops what the issue is that they fail to respect one another first. And like, whether they're friends or not friends, you got to respect somebody first, and that'll help you get to the right spot to have a conversation. But
yeah, good for you. Okay, so what happens is as the organization gets larger and they start taking on more they begin to build a bureaucratic process, and they have, all sorts of rules and SOGs. And I'm not picking on the fire department here at all, but instead of dealing with the problem, they make a new rule, which used to drive me crazy in the federal service, because somebody do something wrong, and instead of dealing with the person or dealing with the problem, they would come out with a new rule or a new general order, and the other thing was, we have to have a training course on, whatever it is that they did wrong.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's another warning sign that we're getting too big too fast. And then, of course, the boss that's going to go off the cliff. The personal interests are placed above the organizational interests. So you start to see things, privileges, the corner office, the extra things, the Lamborghini in the president's parking space, and detachment from the employees or the people in the organization. They think that they are just special.
Do you think that the addressing of the problem, instead of addressing the problem, because we all know if you actually address the problem at its forefront, that takes work. And so a lot of times, are you feeling like, because a lot of things just went together for me there with the puzzle pieces that you had talked about. So if I have to address the problem at the forefront head on, then that takes a lot of work compared to where some of these individuals that are going down the wrong path take the easy road. And the easy road is just, make a new order, make a new policy and put that out, because they're already disconnected with their people. They don't have that relationship with their people to be able to go address the problem, where you got to get out there and communicate. You got to get out there and have these conversations. And a lot of times you sound like a broken record, but you think, is that the correlation? We think that that's the way that it goes. It just makes it's just easy, write the policy.
I think that's the genesis of the problem. Yeah, that's the easy way out. And it's unpleasant to deal with a problem child or a problem issue. So you just come out and write. And that, again, that kind of separates you from the organization, because you're not taking the time to find out what's the reason behind what happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very true.
Do your homework on it.
And those conversations are hard. We know that.
Something just struck me, Clayton, that half your audience doesn't know what you're talking about when you say a broken record.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is very true. What do we say now? What would a cassette? They might know a cassette.
I don't think so.
They don't know what that is.
They don't either. CD.
Yeah.
Very true, but you're right. I mean, I think that you just got to be able to address the problem. You got to be able to create the relationships. You got to be able to have those conversations with them, and we've all been in those. And what I try to explain a lot of the times is that nobody wants to have those conversations. I mean, we certainly don't look forward to them. But when you actually have that pit in your stomach, that little bit of anxiety that's happening, and then you get sitting around in the room and you're sitting down to have that conversation, and the way that the delivery happens. So the person controlling the meeting delivers it respectful, understands that it's just the messenger, okay? We have to have this conversation because of what the choices of the individual across the table made, and that's accountability. But we don't have to be condescending. We don't have to be, rude. We don't have to be any of these things, because then when everybody leaves the room, one is that everybody feels better about it. And, and you address the problem to say, hey, we don't want this to happen again. But they also understand that we only here because of the choices that they made, not because you're getting picked on or whatever else,
So now the next stage of decline, they're getting a little closer to the edge of the cliff, is that they deny that there's any risk or that there's any peril. And they kind of amplify the positive, they discount the negative, they take risks based on ambiguous data. You know, they heard this or they didn't, instead of doing the real research on something. The big piece is externalizing blame. And you don't have to look too far today in the media to see the two pieces of denial of amplifying the positive, discounting the negative, and this externalizing blame. When you begin to externalize blame, you are no longer the leader. I don't care how you mash that up, you're no longer the leader. Leaders stand up and say, if anybody on the audience has ever been to the National Fire Academy, when I'm doing a classroom visit and somebody says to me, my room was dirty when I checked in, or the broccoli was cold, my first statement was, that's my fault. This is my ship, it's my watch, it's my fault. Now, everybody in the classroom knew that I didn't clean the room and I didn't cook the broccoli. But I would tell them, I'm going to go out and make a phone call. And when you come back from lunch, you're going to be able to do surgery in your room. I'm sorry it happened. When you're the leader of an organization, once you stand up and take the hit, once you say, you don't have to take the blame, you can take the responsibility. But that stops the blame game and begins the solve game. And that's why it's important. People say, okay, we got somebody to pick on now. Let's fix the problem, as opposed to spending time, effort, energy, and emotions working on, trying to figure out who made the mistake or who did something wrong. Another thing that you'll see organizations do, not people, is they start to reorganize. Oh, I've been in local government and federal government for 50 years. I have never seen a reorg around the problem child solve the problem. Okay?
Yeah.
No. It just doesn't. Fix the problem. Deal with the knucklehead. And then the last piece, I'm going to separate out between people and organizations. The last piece, they kind of grasp for salvation. There's a series of silver bullets. They're going to bring in a new leader, a new executive director, a new president. It's a lot of panic and haste. There's revolution with fanfare. And in the organization, you're going to see this, I call it a porpoising. There's ups and downs, there's constant ups and downs. In people, this is the point where they say, oh, I have a problem, I'm going to the Betty Ford Clinic. Okay, but that's usually the end.
Yeah.
When the disc goes on. And I think you're going to start to see some of the stuff going on with organizations that have been marginally successful right now, but the economy is changing. As we're speaking on March 27th, 2025, the president is talking about tariffs and these, economic changes that are going on, and we're going to see some of that going on as well. Organizations going under tremendous amounts of stress and grasping for salvation. They're going to come up with excuses and blame, and different things are going to be going on.
This is kind of a humorous take on this. As you were describing some of those things, Dr. Onieal, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and you've described the Browns organization to a T.
Very true.
We're talking about externalizing blame, obsessive reorganizations, grasping for salvation. Like, we're going to get that number one quarterback, and it's going to solve all our problems.
Yeah,
we're going to get a new head coach. It's going to solve all our problems. They haven't addressed a single problem since they came back into the league.
I know. I'm a Browns fan too, and I'm just, they're actually trying to get Dak Prescott. Come on. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I need to switch. I was a Lions fan too. I'm ready.
But it is. I mean, it is a good example of that.
Yeah, very true.
2 years ago, we had the Metropolitan Fire Chiefs meeting in Columbus, and the chief at the time, Chief Happ, brought us to the Ohio State Stadium.
Yeah.
And the way they brought us in there, I thought I was going to church.
It's similar down there. Yeah. You don't have a choice if you're in the
All those
greater.
folks did a great job. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that's what happens. And I can talk. I mean, if you look what happened to Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City, look at Martha Stewart, who was a very famous businesswoman who lied to the FBI about a $60,000 stock deal that she had inside information. And $60,000 to her is nothing.
Yeah.
She went to prison over that. They were going to make an example out of her. Former commissioner of the New York City Police Department, Bernie Kerik, who was, riding the top and went to prison. I can name, 20 different people.
Yeah, and that's just it's
all the other things. Bernie Madoff, who was a Ponzi scheme investor, Harvey Weinstein, who was a very famous movie producer and very powerful man. But they all follow the same path. And I can probably name you 5 fire chiefs that have done the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody's immune to that. There's always that risk if you start believing your own hype, right?
Yep.
That you're going to check all those boxes that you talked about: hubris, pursuing more, denying any risk, and then at the end you're trying to save yourself with a Hail Mary.
Exactly.
Yeah, you fell off the cliff, and now you're just hoping you run into a tree or something.
Hope for a quick end.
Because I don't know. That's just. It's so sad because I feel like the fire service is the best job in the world. It's the best service to be a part of. It's the best people that we surround ourselves with. And then sometimes the people make it, challenging. And then, but just, I don't know, just to remain humble and to just make a difference. And that's what we got into it in the first place for, to be passionate about service, way back to what you had all said, that flywheel. You forget why we're here, then that's a problem. And which I always try to reinforce, mission statements and what your mission is. And if you're doing something in the fire or your firehouse or that doesn't go along with that mission, then why are you doing it? So just getting recentered and trying to stay centered. And it's also, to understand, 25-year career is a long time too. And not to make any excuses for individuals that do find themselves in a challenging situation toward the end of their career, but I notice that's usually when we see it is toward the tail end of their career. Do you think that they've just ran out of energy, or do you think that they've just maybe finally got caught, or what is the potentially of why it's so oftentimes towards the end of their career that I'm aware of?
The things that I've witnessed in organizations and politically, more politically, I think, than organizationally, is that it starts very small. Something happened. I'm going to make something up. Okay. They get a free hamburger at McDonald's. Okay. Why? Well, because they're the fire chief or the battalion chief. Whatever. I'm making this stuff up. Okay. And then it's just like this pursuit of more. Okay. Well, maybe I'll bring my wife and kids to McDonald's and we'll sit down and somebody will bring over a meal for my family. Or, it might be a restaurant, a nice restaurant in town where you go to your wife and go with your wife, your spouse, I should say, and have, an expensive meal. And then the owner comes over and says, thanks for your business, chief, and so good to see you. And, our sprinkler system's up to speed, and thanks for keeping us in. And it's just little things. And you begin to believe that you deserve it.
Yep.
And then,
it's that Swiss cheese effect. all the holes align, catastrophic event, and it just builds up and it becomes that normalization of deviance. You got away with it once, you build upon it, got away with it again. And now eventually you become like you believe you're invincible, and that, all those little things, that's a great analogy you just put that as, because all those little things stack up to then just it's almost like that little ladder stair step to put you up on this pedestal. And the only person putting you up on the pedestal is yourself,
Yeah.
but you're building upon all those things. And that's,
So
how the mighty fall. Then that pedestal gets kicked out from underneath you or you fall off the cliff, you just walked right off it. So
what might be interesting if you have a next meeting with your senior officers or, just a group in the fire department, and just give them an example. I do this every once in a while at the academy, and I was always amazed at some of the answers I would get. I'd say, this is a situation, it's a cold night, you're at a fire all night long, and about 5 o'clock in the morning, the owner of the local McDonald's comes up with a bag full of Egg McMuffins and a big thermos of coffee for your troops. Do you pay for it? And it's amazing and then I throw in a thing. I said, okay, now I'm going to give you additional information. The high school kids that are working there only get a 50% discount on their food. Do you pay for those hamburgers? Do you pay for that meal?
Yeah.
Then I give them a third one. I said, at the end of the day, when they have food that they can't sell, they sell it to the local homeless shelter for 25% off. Do you pay for it? And then here comes the clincher. Next month, you go to the McDonald's and you see that the duct over the kitchen grill is full of grease. Do you write them up as a citation? And I'm not going to tell you the answers that I've gotten, but
Sure.
It's interesting to see how people think.
You can see where all that, it's a slippery slope, right?
Yeah.
Like
back to ethics.
it is. It's tricky sometimes. And
No, it's tricky all the time.
yeah.
Don't ever think you're going to get away with it.
Yeah.
Live your life like you're the headline of the newspaper every day.
Which really we are. I
Yeah.
mean, no matter what. Like, it's just, you gotta do what, again, stay center focused on the flywheel.
Yeah.
We're here to
Bingo.
we're here to be a service, and we're here and on our service, I kind of explain it like this a lot of times as you promote up into the chief role, is that you begin to, your initial service is all about going out on the 911 call or the fire, the EMS run as a firefighter. And then to the service today as a fire chief, I sit here and my main service is my people. I have to ensure that I'm working on the organization and a vision towards the future of the things of where it is, so we can provide a good service to the community. So it's that trickle down effect, but it's essentially, instead of working in the organization, I have to be center focused about working on that organization. And although that flywheel has a few different fins on it, all of us have that center, which is service in general. We just all play our little roles into that to be able to make our fire department successful for our community. And really, the only way it makes it successful for the community is if you are putting out fires and going home safe, and you are saving people when they're, when they're having the bad day on the EMS call. What takeaways?
Well, before we move on, so that's I'm really glad we went over that, because I thought that was a super cool presentation.
Yeah.
And the ability to flesh it out with some real life examples or whatever was really cool. You ended up, so getting back to the very, I don't want to say end of your career, because you're still out doing it, Dr. Onieal, but you end up Deputy U.S. Fire Administrator. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So I was in the federal service. Everybody above me was appointed by the president. So they come and go with the president. I'm the permanent party, the civil service fire chief, if you will.
Okay.
How long were you in that role?
5 years.
Did you like that transit? That seems like that would be an easier transition from going from superintendent of the National Fire Academy to deputy fire administrator. It seems like that's less of a leap than fire chief of Jersey City to superintendent of the National Fire Academy.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that, Josh, and I don't disagree. Going to deputy fire administrator was not my choice. The truth of the matter is that my boss, Glenn Gaines, who was a great friend of mine, suddenly passed away. He died mowing the lawn. And so when that happened, the FEMA administrator who makes all the moves and Ernie Mitchell, who was the fire administrator at the time, I said to them both, look, if you're asking me what I want to do, I want to stay as superintendent of the fire academy because I love the job.
Yeah.
It's the same rank as the deputy fire administrator. It's the same pay as the deputy fire administrator. The only difference is he's my boss or she's my boss. But so I said, but if you want to know what's best for the organization, the best thing to do would be for me to take the deputy job, hire a superintendent, and break them in. I'm right there. I'm their boss. And that's what we did. And then when I decided to retire, I wanted to, it's a whole thing with federal service, but I wanted to lock down all of the senior positions in the fire administration before the presidential election. So you got to be out 18 months on that thing. So I announced my retirement, which allows them to begin the hiring process to replace me. And then that's what we did. So I walked out of the job on January 2020. February 1st, 2020. And all of those senior positions were locked down. The election was in November of 2020. So that was the reason I left.
It's a fantastic career. We don't get the chance to talk to too many people with a career arc that goes from, drafted veteran in the Vietnam era to firefighter all the way to Deputy U.S. Fire Administrator. Congratulations on that career, and you're still going out. You're still extremely busy, traveling a lot and doing a lot of presentations. Is that right?
Josh, I am. So, when you retire, you've got to make some serious decisions. And I never developed a hobby. I was always, working, doing something. So my role now, as long as I'm cognitively and physically able, is to give back. And that's what I'm doing. There are men and women who aspire to leadership positions in the fire service. I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I have done it all. I've been to meetings in the White House. I've testified before Congress. And I tilled 5 truck in Jersey City. So, I never got a pint of water out of a pumper, but
there's still time.
There's still time. But so what I've decided to do is give back. And so I do a lot of public speaking and mentor a number of people around the country and do my best to contribute.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time and giving back for this, hour and a half that we've sat here and talked to you, and just been, a huge impact on us, not only at the symposium in Columbus, but also today. So many things that you share and the analogies that you use is so impactful for individuals in the fire service, and especially for us that sit here. So we are truly thankful for you taking your time, because we hear it all the time. It doesn't matter if you're retired or not. You're still very, very busy, and giving back is probably busier than investing the entire time throughout just regular work. So we couldn't be more thankful for you spending the time today, Dr. Onieal. And just what a heck of a career, and so honored to talk to you, sir.
Well, It's been fun, Clayton and Josh. It was great seeing you and my trip out to Ohio. And you want to do this again another time, you let me know.
Certainly will do.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Right before we let you go, if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
Email is donial@comcast.net. And my cell is 717-253-2320. More than welcome to talk to anybody.
Well, that's fantastic. We really appreciate it. It's been an honor to talk to you. And we'll hope to catch you at another event down the road.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.